It's officially time to be concerned about Travis Etienne and Calvin Ridley. We'll explain why on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. And Kate, we had another wild week of NFL action. Let's be negative to start before we get positive. Let's talk about some players that we are concerned about moving forward. And I want to start with Travis Etienne of the Jacksonville Jaguars. They played in London. The offense, again, looked broken. Now he's dealing with a hamstring injury. Man, I'm really worried here.
I'm extremely worried about Travis Etienne, and it had nothing, honestly, to do with the hamstring injury. Like, we can leave that entirely out of the conversation. Travis Etienne just doesn't look like the best running back on his football team, and that is the biggest issue. When D'Ernest Johnson can come in as the RB3 in your respective offense, and I don't see a difference between D'Ernest Johnson and the type of play that a former first-round pick is putting on the board, that's a huge problem. Huge problem. Ranks 48th out of 59 qualifying running backs in PFF rushing grade, just 65.4. No bueno. Averaging 4.1 yards per attempt. Generally speaking, not great after contact. Just not looking like the guy. He's not been an efficient receiver either. Like, none of these things that we thought made Travis Etienne special are things that are coming to fruition. Now, could it be a product of the offense? Sure. But he just looks kind of clocked out, right? Like, he had this fumble, which ended up being overturned. But I thought it was one of the most concerning plays that I had seen from Travis Etienne, just from a lack of effort standpoint. Because I think the play, I had some people in my comments saying, well, it wasn't actually a turnover. So why would he go for the ball? First of all, you always go for the ball. Correct me if I'm wrong. They coach you to always go after the ball because you don't know how this offense, it happens so fast. Like, you don't know how things are going to be called. You don't know how close it was to being a catch versus an incompletion. Like, you always go for the ball. And Travis Etienne on this, what was originally ruled a fumble, looked entirely disinterested in recovering the ball.
Yeah, he did. And that's a major issue, but also the usage is a major issue. Okay, listen to his rushing attempts over the last couple of weeks. 13 in week 2, 11, 11, 6, 3. And I know he left this game with a hamstring injury, but we were already trending in this direction where Jacksonville paid him this offseason, and yet they're trying to figure out ways to get him off the field in favor of Tank Bigsby. Now we have a report from Doug Peterson where he admits it's a week-to-week hamstring injury for Travis Etienne. That doesn't sound great. And now it's just going to give Bigsby even more opportunities. This is somebody who was a consensus top 10 dynasty running back who was getting phased out of his own offense.
Yeah, I'm super concerned. It's not like Tank Bigsby had a great day either. It's not like this team had a ton of opportunities to, establish the run. The running backs as a team combined for just 17 total rush attempts this game. The running backs combined for 16 total rush attempts. Travis Etienne, again, got out of the game kind of early with that fumble, had the hamstring injury. It was just a bit of a disaster. So it made it a little hard to evaluate the run game. But heading into this game, let's not forget, Tank Bigsby was sitting pretty as one of the most efficient running backs in the National Football League from a yards per carry standpoint, yards after contact. He has been incredibly efficient to this point in the season. And I do think if I'm the Jaguars, I'm looking at Tank Bigsby. I'm looking at how do we salvage this offense? And it does feel like a liability to keep throwing Travis Etienne
Yep.
out there. So what do we do from him from a dynasty perspective? I don't know. And again, I think the
Nothing.
answer might just come down to I'm fading all of these running backs in the top 10 because it just doesn't feel like there's any sort of security for any of these guys. If I have one of these top running backs, I want to sell.
All right, let's talk about a former Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver, Calvin Ridley. 8 targets yesterday, Kate. 0 catches for 0 yards. They have been trying to get him like touches in the run game, which is wild because he's not that type of receiver. Kate, Calvin Ridley, last 3 games, 14 total receiving yards. I know that this passing attack isn't good with Will Levis, but this is the problem that Jacksonville had a lot last year with Calvin Ridley, where it was just really hard to figure out ways to get him involved in the passing game. If you are in a short bench league, a short bench dynasty league, can you feel comfortable dropping Calvin Ridley?
How short a bench are we talking?
6.
I mean, yeah, probably. Like, here's the thing. Calvin Ridley locked into this big, big contract, right? But did he have the track record to back up that big contract? Probably not. He's 29 years old, right? Like, he's not a spring chicken. He's not playing particularly well. Separation percentage ranks 73rd among 101 qualifying wide receivers in terms of open target rate per PFF. 90th among 120 wide receivers in terms of yards per route run, 0.98 yards per route run. That is not good. They are giving him a ton of opportunities down the field. And I do think that's like a part of it. A ton of deep target work at 20.3 yards average depth of target. And that's great. That can create a lot of boom plays. But here's the thing. Those are very low probability completion plays, right? Like,
Yep.
They hit less often. So that just lowers your floor so significantly, especially for a quarterback when those high A dot targets are coming from a quarterback that is struggling in general.
So last 17 games for Calvin Ridley, 63 catches, 824 yards. I mean, he's going to be 30, I believe, here in December. I think it's probably over. Okay. And I know he got a big contract, but we've been trending in this direction for a while. It's been a long time since he's been a useful dynasty receiver. Like, it's been like 4 years now since he's been a useful dynasty receiver. And I think with this offense, I don't see that getting better anytime soon. They're trying to find ways to get him the football, and it's just not effective at all. I think even in a little bit deeper leagues, I just don't understand the point, because he's never going to give you the upside of a top 24 receiver. And right now he's putting up terrible numbers, and he's older. I'm comfortable dropping Calvin Ridley because I don't think that one's going to come back to bite you at all.
I don't think you can drop him in most leagues, just to be fair. Like, I think he has some trade value just because of the name and the contract he got. And I do want to pose one question for you. So, like, he has had, some issues with drops, right? 15.4% droppable drop rate on catchable targets this year per PFF. But the other stat I want to highlight is that he ranks almost dead last in terms of catchable target rate this year. So,
not surprising.
Question mark, if Will Levis were to be benched and Mason Rudolph came into the offense, does Calvin Ridley's value increase? Because I think that's a real possibility. I think the answer is probably yes.
Probably, but do you feel comfortable starting Calvin Ridley if Mason Rudolph's playing? No, because this is still going to be a really low volume passing attack. And I just think DeAndre Hopkins is the better player right now. So can I start the second receiver on the Titans offense? No, absolutely not.
Fair. All of those things are fair, but I still say don't cut him. I still think that you can get a little bit of something, even if you offer him in a package deal for something, just to get a little bit of that extra value. Maybe he doesn't have a ton of standalone value, but I'm still team don't cut him unless your bench is absurdly short here.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about some players that did have some nice performances on Sunday, including our guy, Brock Bowers. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Hims. Your sex life is important, but your schedule is busy. You don't have the time to go to a doctor's office to get treated for ED, but through HIMS, you can get a personalized ED treatment without stepping foot outside of your door. HIMS is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. The process is 100% online, so there's no need to go to those uncomfortable doctor visits. All you have to do is answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for absolutely free. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That is HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compound products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plans. This episode is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Check out our sponsor, Hillsdale College, which is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic, and so much more. I've been taking a couple of these classes. They're so easy. I love that you can take quizzes. You can do some extra readings. There's discussions if you want to go deeper, or you can just enjoy the lectures on your phone. It's so easy. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We are discussing the biggest winners and losers coming out of Week 6. And Kate, let's talk about Brock Bowers, who pretty clearly is tight end 1 right now in not only redraft leagues, but also dynasty leagues. Not a huge performance, but 9 catches for 71 yards. Did have a long catch in this game that was called back because of penalties. I mean, are you on the train that he's dynasty tight end 1 moving forward?
Yeah, and I mean, it is kind of hard, right? Because it feels like you're chasing points just a little bit. Right now, Brock Bowers sitting as tight end 2 on the year after George Kittle's performance on Thursday Night Football, but leads all tight ends by a decent margin in terms of receiving yards so far, 384 receiving yards. The next highest among any tight ends, 301. So he's got an 83-yard clip over the next leading receiving tight end, 37 catches. That's 9 more than any other tight end this year, 7.7 targets per game. He is getting wide receiver usage, and he is a tight end, which we know that's a cheat code. We know that Devontae Adams probably headed out of this system here, and Brock Bowers was already playing like an integral role in this passing game. So I think what's been clear to me, Michael Mayer's been out due to some personal off the field things. So like,
and he's going to be out. He's
going to be out for a while.
Yeah.
I think there's so clearly a role for him, not necessarily as the quote unquote tight end, but he is the leading receiver for this offense, period.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be a while before Brock Bowers is not tight end 1 in Dynasty. We'll see. Maybe they can stabilize that quarterback situation, but it hasn't mattered, right? He's produced with Gardner Minshew. I mean, Kate, you watched that game yesterday. Some of the catches that he was making in that game were unbelievable. They were way behind him, just snagging it. I mean, rookie tight ends aren't supposed to look like this, but I think he's going to clear 1,000 yards pretty easily. And that would only be the 3rd time in NFL history that a tight end's ever went over 1,000 yards. And it seems like he's a lock to do it.
And yeah, what's crazy, this doesn't seem like a team destined for a ton of touchdowns this year.
No.
But I do think that Brock Bowers is getting such consistency in terms of volume and target share that it's probably not going to be not going to matter all that much. If you're in a standard league, maybe Brock Bowers isn't going to be as high a priority on your draft board if you're trying to secure the tight end position. But especially in a full PPR league, my goodness, you're going to be very happy with Bowers' production, even if the touchdowns don't come. And you have to assume that, this isn't going to be a long-term problem for the Raiders. If they continue on this path, they should be within striking distance of their next franchise quarterback in the 2025 NFL draft, right?
Yeah, I think it's not gonna be very hard for them to get that quarterback. You watched that game yesterday. That's a bad team. Who else stood out to you in week 6 that you want to mention here?
Let's talk about Josh Downs, who right now, obviously, like, there's a lot of moving parts here in the Colts offense. You have the Anthony Richardson injury. You have Joe Flacco, who got the start over Richardson yesterday. They said, like, it didn't seem like Richardson was really 100%. So, like, there are some questions about this passing game and what it looks like under Anthony Richardson. But what I do think is that now that Josh Downs is mostly healthy, he is dealing with a toe injury, didn't really hamper him, in week 6 here. But I think we're seeing what the training camp reports had told us all offseason long, which was Josh Downs is a fixture of this passing attack. And he is very close to the wide receiver one for this offense over Michael Pittman. And that's shown to this point this season.
And Pittman's been dealing with a back injury. It was cool to see Pittman out there 3 for 35 and a
Crazy.
touchdown. Yeah. So
Crazy. He was remember, he was a candidate for IR like 45 minutes ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. So yeah, Josh Downs looks awesome. I am curious to see what Josh Downs looks like with Anthony Richardson because we really haven't seen that too much yet. Like most of his production was come with Flacco, but Downs is a very good player, so I'm not all that worried about it. I do want to just mention a couple other players really quickly. David Montgomery got a contract extension. I believe it was either Friday night or Saturday night. And you've been preaching this for a while, Kate, that you think he's undervalued in dynasty leagues. He had another really strong performance, 12 carries, 80 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, it does feel like you're getting a weekly high-end RB2 at low-end RB2 prices in dynasty leagues.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say this isn't exactly what Dan Campbell said after the game, but man, if you haven't read his post-game quotes about David Montgomery, it reads like a song. He loves David Montgomery, but it genuinely feels like, I know we look at Jahmyr Gibbs as the RB1 for this offense, but it really feels like this team goes as David Montgomery goes. Like it feels like that's what we're kind of seeing to this point. And David Montgomery, continuing to get a good chunk of those very valuable carries in the offense. 6 carries inside the 5, converted 4 of them for the touchdown. He's just got a nose for the end zone that you cannot explain. But that's more than Jahmyr Gibbs has seen to this point in the season so far. Like, David Montgomery, I think, is a very discounted version of a top 5 running back that, again, because of the other name value in Jahmyr Gibbs, he's never going to feel as valuable as he really is from a production standpoint.
I want to give you one other name, Kate. Maybe the most shocking name from week 6, Sean Tucker, 14 carries for 136 yards and a touchdown. And oh, by the way, 3 for 56 as a receiver with a touchdown. So you're looking at 390 yards and 2 touchdowns on 17 touches. I gotta say, I did not predict that this week.
I didn't predict this week, but honestly, this is probably somebody we should have mentioned Rachaad White in players we're worried about, because I'm watching pretty much every running back in the Bucs offense, and I'm thinking that they look better than Rachaad White. And Rachaad White is a guy that I don't think anybody has thought, even since, like, I know he's played a key role in the receiving game, but like, I don't think anybody's ever thought he looked great as just a pure runner on the ground, been incredibly inefficient to this point. And I think that the production of Sean Tucker, how good Bucky Irving has looked, like all of this together, while they're trending up, I think Rachaad White trending all the way down. And it's kind of damning to see the production that they have in this offense when Rachaad White struggled so much to this point.
Okay, let's talk about some young and old stars who performed well in week 6, including Derrick Henry. We will get to him next. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. I love PrizePicks for a million different reasons, but one of my favorites is that they're just available in most states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For example, I had Chris Olave in yesterday's lineup. He got a concussion early in that game. My lineup still stays alive. It's the only real money daily fantasy sports platform, again, with an injury insurance policy. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Download the app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day, one in the morning with Tyler Rowland, one in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins. Go check out the new Locked On NFL wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. All right, Kate, let's talk about Derrick Henry, who had another huge performance against the Commanders. He's got 611 yards and 7 touchdowns over his last 4 games. Strictly speaking, for the rest of this season, how many running backs would you take over Derrick Henry moving forward?
0.
Interesting.
What kind
I kind of don't disagree.
I don't think there is any room for disagreeing. Derrick Henry right now on a 17-game pace for 337 carries, just under 2,000 rushing yards, 23 rushing touchdowns, 17 receptions, 139 receiving yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns. Are you kidding me? There is no room for, he's getting absolutely elite usage in an elite rushing offense alongside an elite rushing quarterback. He literally hasn't not scored a touchdown in any game yet this season. He looks like a spring chicken. And I think the only reason that you would ever not rank Derrick Henry as a top 1 tight end rest of season is because you're scared of how old he is.
Yeah. The only other thing I would mention is their schedule, in the playoffs. They play teams like Pittsburgh and Houston, but they've got games coming up against like Tampa Bay and the Bengals and the Chargers and the Eagles and the Giants. It's like, I just have a hard time envisioning him not being successful. And generally, Kate, like throughout Derrick Henry's career, he's always been a player who's gotten better as the season goes on. Like if you look at his career splits, like September and October are just nowhere near as well as he plays in December and January. So I think it's possible that he could get even better as the season goes on. I will say, whenever you're talking about a 30-year-old running back, they can always break down. So that's the only other thing that worries me compared to somebody like Bijan Robinson. But man, Derrick Henry has looked awesome so far. Another player who's looked awesome, Kate, Kalen Williams just keeps getting better and better every single week. This was the best game of his career. 4 touchdowns against the Jacksonville Jaguars, including 56 rushing yards. He's arrived.
He has absolutely arrived. And you're seeing all of these ridiculous things that made him such a high-end prospect. It was kind of crazy to see him in juxtaposition of Trevor Lawrence on the other side of the ball, because I mean, there was just such a difference. Like we heard generational with Trevor Lawrence, and Caleb Williams already seems to be all of that and more. He's already broken the Bears rookie passing touchdown record, their franchise record. Like he very well could break their overall passing touchdown record as a franchise this year as a rookie. And I mean, Marcus, the throws he's making, They're ridiculous. Every
They are
time he
ridiculous.
throws the ball, I lose a bit of air in my chest because they look like they should be interceptions, but he's got just such supreme arm talent. It doesn't matter what angle he's throwing the ball at, it goes where he wants it to go. So let's talk about his overall dynasty value, because right now he's been kind of hovering in QB 12 range. But I'm looking at some of the names ahead of him. CJ Stroud, Joe Burrow.
Oh, the Burrow one is not close for me. And Burrow's one of my favorite players in the league, but from a dynasty standpoint, it's not close.
And here's the thing. I mean, Caleb Williams, he has all the arm talent in the world. He's younger. We've seen Joe Burrow deal with a number of health injuries. Even yesterday, they made it a point on the broadcast to kind of show him how often he's flicking his wrist because it doesn't appear fully healthy. Like Caleb Williams has the mobility, has the arm talent. I think he's pretty easily ranked above Joe Burrow. How about Dak Prescott, who's
not close,
had some struggles, QB 10 right now? I think we can comfortably rank Caleb Williams as a top 7 dynasty quarterback right now.
So yes, I agree with you. Dynasty players do not, because he is QB 11 in the latest batch of October ADP.
That's crazy.
I
have to imagine he's going to be one of the biggest risers in dynasty over the next month.
Yes. We're going to talk about some of the latest ADP stuff later in the week, but you want to guess who QB2 is right now on Dynasty League football?
I already know, so I'm not going to say. It is my man, Jade Daniels, who we just had this conversation. I think it was last week, the week before. Like, how many quarterbacks do you reasonably want over Jaden Daniels with his overall mobility? I think what we're seeing is that we really do have 2 superstars for fantasy here, having been drafted at the top of this draft class. It's beautiful to see.
Yep. I also wanted to mention just Drake May quickly. Right now, he is QB 24 on Dynasty League football. I actually thought he looked pretty good yesterday. Now, there were some turnovers. He had 2 interceptions. He had a fumble, but he gave this offense at least a little bit of life. Hey, they scored touchdowns in 3 of the 4 quarters in this game, and that's a huge improvement from where the Patriots were at before. 243 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. He was also New England's leading rusher, 5 for 38. Not when you're comparing it to Jaden Daniels and to Caleb Williams, not the same, but you can tell that he's got it.
Yeah, you can tell that he's got it. And again, he's so young. Like, he's young, and coming out, he was considered to be more raw than either Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams. And that was part of the reason they sat him, give him a little bit of time to acclimate, behind a veteran like Jacoby Brissett. But what I was really most excited about in May's debut, like, again, you love to see the scoring potential. Wasn't perfect, but just generally, I love to see the mobility and his ability to keep plays alive with his legs. Definitely an underrated aspect of his game that could give him some fantasy value low key. Like, I'm looking at this trade right now, and Drake May, Brian Thomas Jr., and a 2025 first round pick for CJ Stroud and a 2025 fifth. Holy crap. I'm taking Drake May, Brian Thomas, and a first round pick in that trade pretty easily.
Yeah, I agree. I think Drake May, very undervalued. Obviously, I think New England's going to go over a huge offensive transformation this offseason. Like, I expect at least 3 new starters on the offensive line. I expect them to be in the hunt for a wide receiver. They're going to have a high pick in this draft. It's a very good receiver class, a very good offensive line draft. So as long as you can just make it through this year, I think things will really start to look up by the time we get to 2025. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen of the day. Go check out our show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosier, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.